Right then, so today I'm doing another one of my what I call real world fuel economy road tests. This particular road test is for a Honda CR-V. It's a 2.2 diesel, but it's the automatic version. So basically this is kind of a two birds with one stone kind of video, really, because one of the most common questions I get asked when people are looking at these or the manual version is, what's the difference between the two in terms of economy? So that's what I'm hoping to achieve by the end of this. And what we mean by real world economy is exactly what it says. It's what I'd expect people to get who drive the car quite normally, in a mix of driving conditions. It isn't particularly scientific, I have to make that absolutely clear, but I think it is fairly representative, certainly given the kind of the economy figures I tend to get, and I've had numerous of these over the years. So what we do with the videos is very simple. The cars are always started from cold, very importantly, and it's split up into different sections. So the first part of the video is actually quite hard on the car, actually. So the car's cold, it's slightly uphill, going out to some B roads, up onto the main road, and then joining the motorway. I'll then go on the motorway for a bit, 10 miles or so, come back down parallel to that on a main road, and then back down B roads back to where we've started from. It's about, I think it's about 26, 27 miles in total, but it's a fairly good mix. The one thing I will say immediately, of course, is it doesn't include kind of city driving, and city driving you don't get as much in terms of fuel economy, and that's absolutely the honest truth. Also, if you happen to live in a particularly hilly area, then that's harder on cars, so the economy figures you get, tend not to be quite as good. So coming back to kind of real world economy and what I kind of mean by that, because it is, same as a lot of my customers find, it's quite frustrating when you're looking at the manufacturer's claimed figures for cars. Quite often they can seem completely unachievable. It's not to say they didn't get them, but they got them in laboratory tests on rolling roads where there's no undulations and there's no headwinds. So obviously they're going to be far better. The flip side to that, of course, is the fact that the motoring press, when they get these types of cars, always seem to give you figures which are absolutely hopeless. And there's very good reason for that, because the chap that jumps in, or lady that jumps in and drives them, tends to drive them exactly the same as the Ferrari they've just jumped out of. They absolutely hoof them, they go flying around the lanes, and I don't think that's actually fair or representative on the car or cars. So it's not unique to Honda, obviously. I think that most people, and I think I'm talking 95% of all people that buy a Honda CR-V will be buying them for a purpose. They've bought it because it's a diesel, because they want to get good economy out of the car. It seems obvious. So they'll drive according to that. They won't be leaden-footed. They won't be absolutely hammering it everywhere. They'll be conscious of the fact that they don't want to use that much fuel. And also, they are, in the vast majority of cases, family cars. So they do tend to get driven with the kids in the back, and obviously safety and protecting your loved ones is paramount. So you don't tend to drive them particularly hard. So that's how I'm going to drive the car, but it'll be how I always drive the cars. I will, however, stick to the speed limits, as I do in all of these things, for a variety of reasons, because I think it's completely unfair on manufacturers to complain you're not getting the economy out of the car if you're obviously exceeding speed limits. So I think that's a given, really. Having said that, I will be driving to them. I won't be dawdling along 60 mile an hour limits at 40 miles an hour, desperately trying to eke out the last bit of fuel economy. That's not the purpose of this video. This is to see what you may well get yourself if just driving around quite normally in this sort of mix of driving, which seems quite a common thing for this sort of CR-V. So as I say in all the videos, how do you kind of achieve better fuel economy when you're driving. Well, the reality is, in a manual car, obviously, I'll be talking about changing up nice and early and this kind of thing to promote good economy out of the car. With an auto, it's slightly different, although you can still nurture it by backing the throttle off slightly, a little bit earlier, so you're not holding it in gear for a prolonged period of time. But the main thing is actually just smooth driving. On and off the throttle, catching up with traffic, backing off when you're caught up with it, speeding up again, hitting the brakes when you don't really need to because you're not anticipated what's going on in front. All those things hurt the economy of the car. So the smoother you can be with the throttle, brakes, the better for the car. Clearly, keeping an eye at all times regularly on things like your tyre pressures are essential to maintaining good economy on the car. Different types of tyres, normal tyres obviously give the best economy. If you're going to go for kind of winter tyres, they have a higher rolling resistance, so they will knock the economy to some degree. I've not measured how big a difference, but there's obviously got to be something. So I'm just going to scroll through to the average MPG in a minute so I know where I am. If you suddenly find the economy that you've been getting suddenly takes a nosedive, it's obviously pointing to an issue on the car. The most common is actually tyre pressures, followed closely by if you've got brakes dragging. So best thing to do after you've gone for a drive, very carefully, so don't burn yourself, put your hands on the centre of all four wheels on the wheel itself, and just to see if there's any heat or one's particularly hot or hotter than the others. That could be the brakes dragging, so you might need to get them just greased up and really sort of freed up again. It's quite common on all makes and models of car, the way the brakes work. That can happen rather. In terms of maintenance, the obvious one is the engine air filter. Cars are like us, think of the engine as lungs basically. It needs to take lots of air in to combust, and if that's restricted, then it, a bit like you put a scarf around your face when you're trying to run a marathon, it's hard to do it. So just keep them changed on a fairly regular basis. Just follow the manufacturer's intervals basically. So those normally sort those things out. So I'm now close to the motorway, and what I'm going to do is turn the video off now. I'll give you current MPG's 36.4 miles per gallon after nearly 5 miles, but I will update when we come to the end of the motorway. Right then, so we're coming towards the end of the motorway section now. We're up to 14 or so miles, and the fuel economy is up to 42.9 miles per gallon. In terms of kind of weather, it's much the same as it was yesterday when I did the manual version. Quite blustery, it's very cold, it's only 1 degree today, so it's particularly cold, so obviously that is quite hard on cars. Obviously there's no surface water because that can affect fuel economy, but things kind of balance themselves out, I guess. So what I'll do at the next section, that'll be the end of the main road section, and then the final section back to where we started from. Right then, so I'm coming towards the end of the section of main road now. Traffic's been fairly heavy actually. It said very similar to the similar time of day to when I went yesterday. I'm now on 46.5 miles per gallon and about to go down the little lanes back to where we started from. So I will give my final thoughts and the final figure in the next section. So hopefully we'll see where we get to from there. Right then, so just the last mile or so before we come back to where we started from. Coming back to kind of fuel economy, and sometimes the reasons you're not getting the fuel economy, and it doesn't always mean there's actually a problem with the car. As a chap from Honda where I used to work, and I said in one of my previous videos, because I struggled initially when I first had my first diesel, it basically look at yourself honestly. See if you can improve the economy with driving style necessarily than looking into why the car's not giving it. It could well be in someone else's hands, because I can guarantee if we put 10 people in this car, did exactly that same route, we get 10 different results. Some would get a lot more, some would get a lot less, and that just shows how difficult it is for the manufacturers to establish an average figure, obviously. But as I said, I've tried to drive in a fashion that I think is sort of sensible and reasonable, and I've got 47.2 miles per gallon, and that compares to just literally 50 dead on for the manual version yesterday. So it's saying 3 miles per gallon difference. Personally, from my experience of driving these, I think there's normally about 5 miles per gallon between this and the manual version. But on that particular route, that's what it's telling me.